so much
How
for having me.
do you want the world to see you? Who's Bijoy?
I don't have a way to define myself, but I'm a storyteller at the heart of all.
Storyteller.
No job should define you. You are some of a lot of other things also. That can't be the reason for existence. 24 December 1992, when I was 8 years old, I just felt like I wanted to write something and I wrote a poem.
मुझे नहीं पता था. I've known Bijoy. He corrects me that we've known each other for the last 17 years. In fact, he also remembers the date. I've known him as a person who carries a head, on his shoulders beyond his age. He's a poet. He's into theatre. He's into teaching. He's into photography.
There are some things that should stay within the RBI as an institution.
If we have to make sense of an RBI press release, you start reading from the bottom.
Yeah.
Is it a myth or truth? Hey, welcome back to Beyond My Brand with Neeraj Jha. And I cannot not start off, without giving you, expressing my gratitude. You've been wonderful as an audience, and a lot of you have written back sharing with me your feedback and suggestions. So, thank you. Today, I have a guest, very, very special guest. All my guests are. I think Vijay is more special. He's a multi-dimensional, personality. Obviously, financial journalist at the core. But he's a poet. He's into theatre. He's into teaching. He's into photography. We'll try and touch upon each one of them and try and figure out Bijoy, the individual. Bijoy, welcome back to my show, and wonderful to have accepted.
Thank you. Thank you for all
How do you want the world to see you? Who's Bijoy?
Bijoy, I mean, there is it. I don't have a way to define myself, but I'm a storyteller at the heart of all.
Storyteller.
So I think when people say कि वो कहानी भी अच्छा है, कहानीकार नहीं अच्छा है.
मुझे नहीं पता था. I've known Bijoy. He corrects me that we've known each other for the last 17 years. In fact, he also remembers the date. Perhaps that's one, being a journalist again. I have known him ever since I've known him. I've known him as a person who carries a head, on his shoulder beyond his age. I always found him to be more mature than many of the journalists, much more senior. And that's perhaps where and how we clicked. Was it 2007?
2009, November 9. I told you the incident also when we were chatting on the way. But yeah, I remember that because of strange sequence of events, and also the fact that I called you. At that time, you were at HDFC Bank, and I was supposed to call HDFC, and I'm your rookie. So I ended up making the wrong mistake of calling you. You were very polite, and you kindly told me if you don't have the number of the concern, that I'll share it with you. Which is why I remember, and then eventually I had chance to speak to you. But that's why I remember, because it was a mistaken call.
Wonderful, and we have stayed in touch ever since. It's always was a pleasure receiving a call from Bijoy. Always at peace. I was telling him that perhaps the fact that he's so multidimensional, it would have helped him stay grounded, sane. Is there any truth in this, Bijoy?
Possibly, because I think no job should define you. And I think that's an important thing that I tell people, thing that I'm teaching people. No particular job, no particular company, nothing defines you. You are son of a lot of other theaters. And I think the fact that I do a little bit of theater, a little bit of writing, a little bit of teaching, a little bit of training, you have various outlets that allow you to be. And when someone writes about you, they can write about you from any angle. They can see you from the perspective of that angle. I think sanity comes when you have people in your life to add to your add to the peace that you have around you, but also things that you do, activities that you do that are distinct from what pays the bills. I think what pays the bills tends to consume too many things. That can't be the reason for it. So you have to have more than that ability. So yeah, so some of these activities do like.
You would have been born like this, right? Now I know that, Bijoy was a poet first and he became a journalist later. I will come to this question, what prompted you to become a journalist? Do you remember your early days? What got you into writing?
23rd December 1992,
Uh-huh.
when everybody was getting ready to go to church, Christmas Eve at 5:36. Everybody was rushing around. 7:38 to of mass, which is why I remember the date. And it was 8-year-old my kid, but
You remember on days?
yeah. So I remember it because it was Christmas Eve, so it's easier to remember. I have no idea. I used to read. As a kid, I used to read, and the advantage is when you have sisters who are elder than you, when their textbooks comes, also you have something to read. But I was then, because of that, also reading far above my age already. Kind of being textbooks and stuff because उस जमाने में उतने ही books access थे. So at 8, I was reading slightly above my age, and I think somewhere I just felt like I'm going to write something, and I wrote a poem. It was a poem in some car, whatever, and then at the age of 8. And I just put together 4-5 lines, and that didn't go. Then I wrote a second one, which is what I called my first proper poem, because I used words in that surprised me. And that's the reason my parents encouraged me to write that. The poem is very simple, and I always tell people
Would you remember?
so it's called Fig Fat Fatty.
Ah.
Fig Fat Fatty went to a party. He looked too grave. Because he wasn't brave, he went up and down. He went down, down, down because he was just like a clown. Now, obviously, this makes no sense, right? But there are words in there are themes in there that were decent.
And it was
Somehow,
rhyming.
they're rhyme. I obviously, now I don't write it rhyme, but then it was rhyme. He's the only poem of mine that I actually remember. Because I cannot remember, because now I write 3 verse. I don't remember my poetry. I know the poems, I'll talk about the poem, but I cannot remember poetry drawbacking. But this one I remember.
Have you considered having it that collection from that time published?
Some of the poems that I did uniquely publish in Click Snapshots and Reverse, are from that early period. So I'm talking not about childhood poems, but poems written in my teens, because somehow I just cleaned up the writing a little bit here or there, but largely the poems stand. I think maybe because they were relatable and images taken and stuff, so they kind of found their way into the collection.
Let me have the privilege of receiving a copy of that, which is Rage, which has made people all over, say all good things about Bijoy the poet.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Watson. Thank you for doing this because, as you know, and this is a plug for my friend's foundation, but all the proceeds, because he's got my brother on it on the cover. Yeah. So all the proceeds of the book go to the foundation that works with a charity that works with at-risk kids who are like in Devnar and those kinds of slums. And so yeah. So that's the last photograph of my brother. So it's dedicated to his memory. But like I said, all of this goes to a charity that works with kids and largely in the education space. Apart from just publishing, it also helps a good cause. So,
Folks who haven't got yet, unlikely that you haven't got a copy of this, please go ahead. If I have to buy, where do I buy it from?
you can just buy it on Amazon. You can buy it on the publisher, Book Leaves.
Amazon.
It's a range of things.
Wonderful. Click Snapshots in Words, Bijoy Idicheriah. It's almost like a Bengali, this thing, that Bijoy, tell us a little more. Always gives me an impression, or gives one an impression that, Bijoy is from West Bengal.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me this. Bijoy is fairly common. There are directors and there are other journalists with the same name, Bijoy, in Kerala and other places. It is as common a name in Kerala as it is in Bengal. I have a different reason why I have that name, but I'll come to that in a second. But Bijoy doesn't have standalone meaning in Malayalam mother language, but it comes from the same core word of Vijay, victory, which is in Bengal it obviously means Bijoya. So that's where the meaning comes, no? But my dad is called Joykutti at home. Joy at home. His name is Idicheriah, but he's called Joykutti at home. So when they were naming me, my sisters were Bindu and Binu. So they were going to name me Binoy. And somehow my dad said, why don't we make it Bijoy? Because it'll have my name also. So I have my dad's name also in my name. So that's the Joy Kuti.
Wonderful.
So that's how
Binoy became Bijoy.
So that's why I have a slightly different reason for why my name was Bijoy.
Wonderful. What was your brother's name?
My brother's name was Anil. Anil.
Younger.
He was my elder brother.
Beautiful. How did journalism happen, Vijay?
So when I was a kid, I used to read, and back in the day, like now, our kids are privileged that we can buy them the books that we like. So I used to go to the circulating libraries of the day, and the other things available to read were newspapers. So I started with the funnies, and I keep telling people that start your kids off on the funnies or the Sudoku or the crossword, or start from there. Then it moves them to the sports page, then move them into the rest of the newspaper. So I kind of did that, and I was always slightly precautious in terms of wanting to know news. So my dad would watch a lot of news, like most people, but I would sit with him and watch. I think it also helps that many of us grew up in a generation where there were only so many channels, one or two at best.
Yeah.
So I watch news. When I was in the seventh or eighth standard, I remember telling my parents I'm going to be a journalist. Oh, I have no idea. Yeah, that is fairly early. And from there, all the decisions I made were that I will eventually become a journalist. I used to read, obviously, but I did my DA in literature, then I did journalism, then I took on the job that came along, which was finance journalism, which was not part of what my original plans were. But then anything that I joke, anything that paid me to write, I was happy to do, because that was as close to being a writer as I could imagine, and having a job at that point. But I enjoyed journalism. I genuinely enjoyed journalism as a student of it, as a reader, and now later as a practitioner.
Wonderful. Today, Vijay always looked to me, the RBI at time, Reserve Bank of India, and he ended up serving the central bank, as the communication percentile and its strategist, and he did a wonderful job, and it's something that we could see from a distance. My initial memory of RBI, Bijoy, was as a young journalist. If you happen to make sense of an RBI press release, you start reading from the bottom.
Yeah.
Is it a myth or truth? Now that you've been part of that, your mechanism.
Yeah.
Truth or
So, as a practitioner who used to write about RBI, that was largely true, but that's also because of how. So, when RBI says something, they are referring to the laws under which they are doing it, they're referring to the previous notification. So, there is a structure to what RBI is doing,
which would be different from a regular press release structure.
which would be different from a regular press release structure. Because inverted pyramid, new structure. So, then a lot of times RBI would say, this is what is happening, this is what is there, and this is the action that we are going to take. Where possible, there have been changes that have been made, or even if we have kept the structure, RBI now has bullet points, readability tests are done. Things are a lot better because people within the RBI also realize that we are in a world where people will make communication difficult, or even miscommunicate, or conduct fake communication if you don't communicate properly. So within the RBI also, there is a lot of understanding of this. And so the press releases are written better, the notifications are written better. And this is no credit to me or whatever. The team within the RBI and the Department of Communications that leads it, and all the departments that write these press releases, they've taken an effort to make it easier to decipher. And now you know that, okay, this is where the action is taken. This is where the input is on why the action was taken. Also, there have been an improvement in the amount of detailing that RBI gives, so that there is no misinformation on why RBI acted.
Why is that answered better now?
The whys are answered better. And those happened because of, obviously, things that happened in the system that led to RBI changing how it communicated. All in all, it's just gotten better. RBI communication has gotten better. I was one blip in that transition. RBI is a 1991-year-old organization, so you can make your little dent somewhere along the way, but the institution changes because it sees reason to change.
Yeah. Now, cannot agree more. Reserve Bank of India, an institution like the RBI, a regulator, in terms of approach and strategy, some things you just shed some light on. How different it is? Is it fundamentally different from, let's say, a communication that an HDFC bank will be?
Okay. So, yes, because there can be different audiences for the same press release. So, while some press releases, and it's a lot of conversation within RBI and outside RBI also about this, some press releases are written for someone who's in the derivatives market. There's only so simple that you can make that, because it is about this cancel contract, this derivative, this change, net open position, blah, blah, blah. And I'm referring to a recent press release. You can only simplify it to a point. But then the audience for that press release is also, or the notification is also very limited to a set of people. Impact will be different. That RBI will communicate when the governor comes and speaks in a press conference, or whenever that opportunity comes. But some press releases are very niche and written differently. Well, some press releases, for example, when RBI will take action against a bank, that has a public face. When RBI does some warns about some, for example, RBI is against crypto. So RBI will say something against crypto or explains why it's taking an action against crypto. Those kind of actions are written with the public in there. So within RBI also, there is understanding that some things, for example, if you change something that impacts the way banks function, you also don't want to panic people into thinking there's something wrong. That's why you are asking banks to change something. So you will have an explanatory press release and a notification. The notification will tell is addressed to the banks and is aimed at the banks. While the press release that comes with that notification will be more in sync with what you said about HDFC Bank or something, where there is an explanation for how it's happening, simpler language, all of that. So the legal part gets taken care of by the notification, while the public facing part gets taken care of by the press release. I think RBI does a fairly good job in trying to balance these out, but you're never going to have very simple language press releases from
a regulator.
from the RBI, especially because there are so many things. People trade thousands of crores based on whether a the was there or not, or whether the governor shrugged his shoulders in a press conference. So the RBI has to be that much more reticent when it communicates, and that's the nature of that institution.
Who decides whether this is a press release material? When you were showing it into the press, obviously I want the whole world to know.
Yeah.
You have, stakeholders. You have those state jackets. Every information is not meant for everybody else. Now, who decides this?
So often, press releases are written for most of the things that are done. But then a call is taken saying that the audience is limited. Maybe you will have an explanation, but the notification may be much more detailed because it has operational inputs. It happens at the highest end. Communication has to be driven, especially in an institution like RBI, at the governor, deputy governors level, and obviously executive directors who handle those departments. So between these three layers, the decision on those press releases will happen. Final call on any press release will go all the way up. Any big material press release will go all the way up. But the Department of Communication, which is the nodal department, works very closely with all of these all layers here to ensure that it is timely, it is pushed out at the right time, writing wise, inputs, all of that goes out from the Department of Communication.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And pardon me, so many questions on RBI. RBI as an institution, has always fascinated me like it has so many other Indians. And I've seen this transition, Bijoy. You're absolutely right. RBI's communication today is much, something that is much more conscious of the fact that it's being written for the people in our Taj. So I've seen that transition. So you're absolutely right. Has it today, when you look at yourself post the RBI stint, we've had, we've discussed this earlier also, different points. How do you think this has made you better? What impact has it had on you?
I always respected the RBI as an institution. It was a privilege to be asked to work with the institution when the opportunity came along. One of the only people who's ever worked I think the only person who's worked as a communication consultant with the RBI for the stint that I had done. So it's an absolute privilege having worked there. Even now, when I'm giving you answers, I am ending up trying to speak as broad as possible, because there are some things that that should stay within the RBI as an institution. Even if I have left the RBI, some things you take away from that, of course. So I think I'm a lot more mature, having worked in an institution like the RBI, where you see that as a press person, sometimes you're like, why doesn't the RBI do this? But then you realize within the RBI there are so many layers, there are so many permutations and combinations that people have to think about before they take a single decision. So when you are within the system and you're privy to seeing some of this, the appreciation is a lot more. So from my perspective on learning from the RBI, I'm a lot more reticent on talking about things that happened within the RBI, but I'm also much more appreciative of the fact that RBI gets so much done. Uh, Even though there are some limitations because of the nature of the linkages between many of its role. It has this role also and it has this role also. So RBI has to balance that. On a personal level, I think just being party, just being a fly on the wall on it, to take a reference to Alpana Man's name of Alpana Man's book, uh, is that you were participating in history playing out in those periods. As party to G20, as party to RBI at 90. He helped make a docu-series. We launched the podcast of the RBI, played with the media room within the RBI. So all of these are things that you were party to. And there are so many incidents, so many institutions that you saw actions happening on. I think when you leave history, your appreciation of it is a lot more. You're a lot more wiser. And I think it just speeds up your learning sharply because you've lived it rather than not even just reported on it or, tried to connect with. I think I am much more appreciative of all the things that go into decision making at the executive level. And maybe there's a change in how I look at decision making and how I approach those parts of my life where I now have to look at, oh, what are the linkages between these kind of decisions that you take that impact these other parts of your life?
Before I'm going to ask you one more question, Avia, then we move on. Allow me a second to explain to you. Bijoy mentioned Alpana ma'am. Alpana Kilawala, very dear friend, institution by herself. All of us started covering RBI, and she was there, for us to kind of help us and guide as young journalists. She's an absolute institution, and tremendous respect for her. So wonderful. Vijay, anything? My question would be, now that you're no longer part of RBI, what memories are you? Anything that made you happiest?
So within the admin, was party to,
2 years.
oh, yeah, yeah. You were part of the Indian team at G20. I was part of the Bharat team, as they called it, at G20, and there was so much happening. And it was feet on the street. I saw executive directors of India, I saw of RBI or ministers, everybody doing footwork at that point, and because we were the host country. I think just being part of that experience, just the G20 experience, which was in the first few months,
Overwhelming.
was so big. Obviously, within RBI, I got to do a lot, but those are things that I will speak less about. But that one aspect was very important. Within RBI, just working closely with the governors. I think both the governors that I had the privilege of working with, Kantadas sir and Sanjay Malhotra sir, were very good people, and they allowed you space to do your things. And it was an absolute privilege just being party to their decision making and thinking. I think just appreciative of that. And some really nice people at RBI, the best minds in many spaces are within the RBI. And just lucky to be in the room sometimes.
RBI's top leadership will mostly be the, what is it called? AAO. Group A, Group B services, right? RBI?
So yeah,
Am I? So,
RBI's top position will generally come from vice and two deputy governors from within the RBI, two deputy governors, one a banker
yeah,
from the mostly the public sector,
correct.
and one economist from the wider universe. I think it all comes.
No, and it's amazing. Yeah, correct. It's amazing. Now, enough of RBI. Now we'll come out. I, for instance, didn't know the Vijay's, poetic, competence till about some time back. Now I know that he's been writing since age 8. What has helped you better? Being a poet, has it helped you become a better journalist, or or vice versa?
I think it would be vice versa because I I also have to do work in a wide agency. There's an economy of words that you have as a poet. As a storyteller,
Words. Yeah.
as a storyteller, sometimes you have the luxury of a novel, a whole set of books. In poetry, sometimes you have to get an image in, try and close it in. Right? I think in journalism, the advantage I had was that I was in a wire agency putting out flashes, trying to keep it as tight as possible. 72 characters is ingrained in my head because that was the number of characters they had for a flash. You would know this.
Correct.
Okay. We have a brief history and then we both worked in the same institution in different avatars.
Different times, yeah.
Yeah.
We've had common bosses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that really helps. But I didn't much now when I'm writing again, I find that my poetry often touches topics that I would like to write about as a journalist, but then the institutions that I work for, there are limitations that you do because of whatever. So I sometimes I'm able to address those aspects in my poetry. And my poetry tends to be about things that are happening in our world. It can be personal or it can be about a war, but they tend to be about things happening that are relevant to this universe and this world. And I think what may have started with poetry impacting journalism is now the reverse happening because a lot of my thoughts flow between these two places because it's writing in the end. Yeah, sometimes it'll come up in journalism, sometimes it'll come up in poetry.
What about photography? Bijoy, for those of you who do not know, is more than competent photographer, wildlife photography. And you do it with
With friends who are
friends
really
feelings,
good.
they're extremely good, like the likes of Sivarat and all, right? So, but that's no, you're not writing, but that's storytelling.
Yeah.
Would you want us to know a little bit more about this?
So I will refer to myself as a competent photographer.
Competent.
Yeah.
On a scale of 10, if you're let's say a 9 on 10 journalist,
I'm not. Yeah, I would be at 5. Because you see such good photographers
Yeah.
that you're like, yeah, even in poetry.
I can give you talent on journalism too.
If you look at poetry also, you have the legends that you know in English and Hindi, Urdu, where you have Gulzar Saab, Javed Saab, and all of these people. When you look at them, those are aspirational. And you want to be there. But in photography, I see people who are able to play with light so beautifully. Like, it's not just about clicking a button or owning a good camera, right? And owning a good camera is very important, especially if you're trying to do wildlife, which is what most of us do. But someone like Vinay Simber, she's able to tell stories in a hunt, and that will take a 3-hour patient stop, or it'll take an overnight, just you're getting bitten by mosquitoes out there.
Yeah.
So I've been there, okay, with them sometimes.
Yeah.
But I would call myself just competent person who can click the photographs, and I may need 10 or 20 shots to get one good shot that eventually you will post, while they will get 19 out of 20. So,
which is the one photograph that you're most proud of? You would like to
first ever photograph.
And what animal was this?
Oh, beautiful. Tiger.
Tiger.
Right. I'm obsessed.
Do you have that picture?
Tigers. Yeah.
We'll use it in our
yeah. So Arrowhead, unfortunately, has passed away. I bought Arrowhead when she Ranthambore. And my first ever safari. I'm sitting in the safari, just our car, and we've not had a sighting for an hour and a half, and just paused at one place. And then we see Arrowhead coming.
Which year?
This is 2021 January. And we see Arrowhead coming. Since then, I did many safaris. My wife will tell you, he came disappearing off. I have one plan for next month. So when Arrowhead was starting India, she was from Punjab at that time, right? And she had, I don't know. That's why she's got Arrowhead. That we made. But you're not got much beard. Yes. No. Like, these are all family. So an Arrowhead was walking towards us, just crows. You're like seeing the tiger with the bus. And then she came this close, and she jumped on a pad. She was extremely punctilious, because although Ranthambore by nature tends to have tourists. Yeah. She walked this close, and I had old camera. I had a really old camera, but a decent lamp, but old camera. She was right here, and the camera lens could only click this much of, but from the side. Okay, so you basically see you see the detailing, the top coming, you see that whole detailing, and that will remain my favorite photograph forever, no matter how many thousands I have clicked after that, because of one, it was your first. Literally my first ever shot. And because she was so close that without a Zoom, I was here. Jay, I didn't get a group. I was just talking. And she was fantastic. And as she passed the years, even till the last week, she was getting up right. She was something else. She was a great story. Probably.
I don't know how many of you know. Bijoy is a doctorate, and the thesis that he chose is Indian media.
The rise of subscription models in business news in India.
So tell us a little more about Bijoy. What made you?
So, thanks to my first job, which ended up
Do you like being a doctor?
No, I will only use it in some academic setup like that. She was a very alienating piece.
Is it?
Yeah. I like people who want to use it. I find it, especially in the business that I read, where people leak up to you and relate to you in that way they're alienating.
That's a terrific way of putting it. Yeah. Yeah.
So the business that I'm from, which is the wire business, is where I got my first job and is there for 17 years of my life. That's a subscription business, but that's an older subscription business. That is a B2B subscription. With the advent of cheaper telecom, UPI like digital payments, and other factors, I felt that there is a case for a rise in actual subscription-based standalone platform. When we see that there are many of them that are there in India, I focused on the business ones among them because I also see that there is a niche that people are happy to pay for specialized information in business on maybe a fintech, maybe deal making, maybe long form journalism, maybe about a certain sector. People are happy to pay for those because one, either it is an intellectual improvement or there is a trade-off. Unlike many people who don't like to pay for general news because everybody wants general news free because everybody chases general. So that's why I find it difficult for general news publications to handle subscriptions unless they are like donations or various other forms of. But business news, I think there is a case for good subscription-based models. We are still at the nascent stage because people still don't understand that they have to pay for good quality, and that is also to service. But I think increasingly there will be a group of people who want regular news consumption, general or business, which will be free, and they will be driven by ad revenue driven models, which also have possible impact on editorial integrity. While at the other end, there will be subscription based platforms that possibly do some some events and subscription or no ads whatsoever, which makes them look even more editorially sound, and then they have that. I chose it because I thought that it's a module that I understand. It's an industry that I understand, but my learnings expanded far beyond what I thought it would be because sometimes people surprise. Sometimes models also struggle. So during COVID, there was a boom, which is when I was originally started studying, and then there were people cutting back on all such kinds of subscriptions. So during COVID, everybody took all kinds.
Yeah.
Then when people start realizing the amount that they're spending, they cut down on something. News was also something there. During COVID, there may have been a demand for higher information, more information, including health and other things. So there may have been more. So then I had to wait out a whole year where I just watched. And that extended pre-doctorate for a year. But I waited out a whole year to see how many of the platforms survived. Most of them were alive, and some of them even thrived. And then I continued by studying.
2 questions, Vijay. One, what was the motivation? Was it you've been part of this media which was monetizing itself much before the media on the other side got into it. Was the motivation that I'll be able to help my organization monetize better, or tomorrow I'll be able to help other publications? A lot of publications in India have toyed with this, and this was startling. I don't think there is anybody you could say that I'm making enough money out of.
Yeah, they're sustainable. Society is a
yeah. So is there a something that you have to for them. Mint has experimented, Business End has experimented.
Is there advice for them?
Yeah.
Uh, no, I think there's a freemium model, which is this where some articles are free to the regular article to and the others go into premium category. So I think Anita Port does it, the Standard does it, we does it, ET does it, Define does it. So there are different formats of that already exist, and I think increasingly people do realize that especially for business means and those kind of specialized niche, you will have to start paying. And there is going to be a small group of people who will fund the availability of this kind of specialized meals. What are the models that they can work on? There can be the lot more data. You look at some of the editors who are kind enough to give me time, come to best publications, they get time, including legacy publications and new age publications. They spoke about how you can use AI better, you can use data better, and everybody talks about AI. But when it said AI, I mean that they used you can use AI to look at edits. You can look not for generating correct, writing correct, but for edits. You can use AI to aggregate data better, extract data better. I think data becomes a commodity that people can work on. They'll understand what people are reading better. And you'll say, oh, this happens through normal, clicks on the website, except for you. No, but a person who pays you money to read, what makes him stop? Why weren't you able to retain that customer? Would he be interested if he is somebody who likes to interview? Would he be interested in a round table where you bring a few founders in, a curated event? Those kind of insights will go far beyond, and I'm talking about insights beyond and analytics beyond the data. Those kind of insights will definitely come in. And almost every media company in this country does some form of events, but there are also forums that you can do. There are also engagement that you can build that can lead to better information, better storytelling. And quality of storytelling will improve if you know your reader is invested in you. Invested not in money terms also, but in ensuring that you do better. They're voting with their wallets. That's important.
Vijay also does two things beautifully. I don't know how many of you know this. He teaches. I mean, he became a doctorate later, but he's been teaching ever since. And he teaches two kinds of people. What I've figured. Teaches youngsters, of course, in different colleges. One called Bangar, this is alma mater. And he also teaches senior leaders in corporate, right? He teaches them voice communication, how to use your voice better, more effectively and efficiently. And perhaps his background in theatre helps him there. Can tell us a bit more about this.
I'm always performing. Whether it's on stage, whether it's front of a class. If you can't engage a class of 21-year-olds in some sense, then you're very difficult because their attention spans are extremely limited. Even if, like the college use or some of the colleges allow you have to leave your phone on the table so that they actually pay attention and stuff. Because it still takes effort to engage a class. And I enjoy, well, the sound of my own voice, and as people will say, but I enjoy talking to people, especially on these areas, which is journalism and business and these kind of topics. So, talking about students, I learn from them. Most of I'm up to date on all the bingo that's happening because I hang out with people at colleges or open mics where I'm generally the senior citizen in those rooms. So yeah, they are the future. And if we can't give back to them, I am the product of some very good mentors back in college, and both undergraduate, postgraduate, and in my job. Some of my bosses have been extremely good mentors. In it, the journey may have been harsh, and you may have had to give back feedback. All of that is learning. So I am the product of very good teacher. Then so when I go back to teach, it is me just giving back. And I also take back, right? All of those are people who you're going to and tell this to people that, I'm going to be able to revel in your journeys. Your wins are also my wins, right? Okay, so I now see them walk from wherever they landed, and from there they will start their journey. And now I'm going to sit back every time they get an award, every time they get a news break, and they posted on social media. I'm rejoicing. And it's not like every time I have to call it out or whatever. I'm proud of the person that you have become. I think that's just something that you did with maybe some of your junior colleagues also, because I grew with the system and in colleges. With corporates, so teaching in colleges, it can be satisfying. I do it purely for, like you said about sanity. That's one of the things that gives me the most peace. And it's a lot of work. You have to also check papers, it's everything. But it's an integral part of what I am. Teaching corporates is different. Those are people who already know their job. You can't teach them that. You can teach them to look at their job. Sometimes when they talk to an audience, like I spoke about RBI, right? If a banker is going to give a press conference, he can talk to you in all numbers possible and lose the audience in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay? Or he can tell you, Laddu. You can pull the audience with this. Okay? And that's the game. The game is story made. You get a mic, you're performing. Whether you admit it or some of the best corporates in the country without taking names are very good performers. They know how to tell a story. Same story. 30 years they've been telling, but they know how to make it seem natural. Access cake. Not everybody is a gold story like this, but you can pick up storytelling skills. We can pick up how to modulate your voice, yeah, how to sound serious and somber when the problem is there. At that point, your body language cannot be like this because it's a defensive issue. Everything will add up poorly when they look at you. You can't be sitting like this in past 5 years. All of this implied poorly. You can't be like this in a podcast. All of these are things that you teach them. And these are not people who need to be taught many of these things. They just have to be said, sir, this is how you see. Please be more aware. This is the response you gave. Maybe you could have worded it slightly different. This is all. Most times it's a pleasure to work with top corporates because they understand the need. That's why you're in the room.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to work with, So I won't ask you this, who do you enjoy teaching more, Bijoy, but I'll definitely ask you.
Too many NDAs.
No, who's more difficult to teach?
Oh,
Youngsters or
students.
students?
But only because they're a bigger class. Sometimes you get people who already believe there is. They are.
That's a problem, right?
Yeah, they are. And including sometimes students who think that they've got some proficiency already worked in some place and come. So everything that they're already experts.
Yeah.
You don't have to break that hubris or whatever. But sometimes you just have to navigate it. And it takes a little extra effort, especially when those people have tens of thousands or lakhs of people who look up to them or whose paychecks they effectively sign. But I find that if you go higher, most people value what somebody else brings to the table. And that's why they bring you into the room. If they don't, then that's a waste of everybody's time and money, and their time is money.
Yeah.
So it's very rare to find top management that doesn't understand to brief on why someone is in the room. And if that happens, it takes 5 minutes to throw them off and kind of make them understand why. That's part of your skill.
As is format, thank you, Bijoy, for this first half. As is a format, the host also takes turn to ask me questions, and please feel free ask me any question. We feel right.
As the format, we have not discussed anything before the podcast.
Nothing. It's all going to be.
I said I want to come and just talk.
All going to be pulled out of the blue for me.
So yeah, I'm going to put you on the spot on this one.
Please.
How is it working with corporates that are led by diversified shareholders, and how is it working with corporates that are promoters/family to be? And what would be your advice be to either side?
I happen to be fortunate enough to have worked with each of these systems that you just mentioned. And HDFC Bank was, if a so-called professionally managed company, on one extreme, I've also had the privilege of working with, let's say, Reliance Industries or about the Airtel and the Bajaj. Bajaj Group's a family business. So is Reliance and Airtel. And I was able to, find, a little bit difference. Bharti Airtel, in my opinion, was somewhere in between. It was a family business, but the management that was there, that was running the company, was again, I mean, I don't know why they call it professionally managed. Every company is professionally managed, even family businesses. Wonderful professionals running. Some pluses in the family business that I saw was this. One was, they, unlike, contrary to popular belief, they had the appetite, not just the money, to hire the best talent at whatever cost. It's a myth that multinationals pay you more. Family businesses are amazing. So are in other. Two, the decision making was perhaps clear. Some of these issues that you and I have seen erupting in some of these professionally managed companies, I think family-run businesses are a little more insulated, protected, because there's no questioning the authority of the top person.
Sure.
Like he's the chairman, he's both executive. So that was something that I saw. Then I found nothing major to distinguish these three systems. Airtel, I keep saying this, I found it somewhere in between. Beautiful model. They pose a family business, run their family business, they keep other series. But the company across the board, the entire thing was run by the professionally, hired people. So that was something that I found was different. HDFC Bank, of course, and banks like HDFC, the US companies are obviously all run by professionals. It's top. I don't know if I answered it.
Yeah. But is decision making faster in a family run business?
Depends again. I mean, if the top person is in control, I think everything boils down to this.
Yes.
If the top person is in control, decision making will be easier, not just taking but also implementing. In family, it's beyond a doubt. Family will be in charge of those critical decisions. Nobody can question.
The second question has nothing to do with what we have been talking about so far. It's on accessorize. Something that both you and me like to. I like to accessorize. For example, I'm wearing a podcast. I'm wearing a podcast cufflink today.
Can we zoom on that? Yeah.
That's a podcast cufflink, guys.
Wow.
Okay. So there are things. It's my prep. When I get into the zone of what I want to wear today, what I want to do today. How important is that in terms of our storytelling as people when we show up in a home? But also how important is it to be well dressed in especially the kind of roles that you and I have dealt?
No, very, very interesting question. I've loved to answer. The one thing, the basic is that, you must have a sense of when to wear what. Second part, while none of the leaders I worked with would have said this in so many words, in fact, one leader said this, but it was there in their eyes. You could see this in their eyes, that, they were appreciative of the fact that you have chosen to dress up well in a timely fashion. You don't have to overdress. Yeah. It's something that I could see in their eyes across the board. Everybody, all these leaders that I got a chance to work with, all top leaders across the board, that's on the top in India, they were all appropriately dressed, never shabbily dressed. Never. Yeah. And in fact, I remember, if I could take the liberty of saying this, Mr. Puri, in one of the award functions, and I was standing here with, some senior colleagues, Mr. Puri walked in and he screams from a distance, Mr. Jha, I'm looking, something very dapper. So it's nothing new. Tell me something which is new. He laughed and I laughed. All of us laughed. So leaders have, a great appreciation for the fact that it's also, in my opinion, your way of showing respect.
Correct.
You never show up in front of somebody that is respectable, shabbily dressed.
Agree so much.
Underdressing is a subjective matter, but I may have overdressed other people. I may not have no. But underdressing is criminal, in front of somebody who's respect. I make it up. I'm very, very careful.
Same thing. So people used to ask me, why do you carry a jacket regularly? What do you? Really? Yeah, I'm carrying it to respect the person. He's given me his time. He's given me, he's going to spend time, explain stuff to me. It's time taken away from his core role. It's a privilege that he's talking to me. Right? Least I can do is turn up. These are things I can control. Yeah. It's also my way of psyching myself.
No, absolutely. And these people would also ensure that, they're not being disrespectful to you by wearing something they could afford, right? I mean, they were those positions. They could afford wear anything. They took care. So, thank you, Vijay. Wonderful question. Wonderful question. I'm very happy to answer. Now we'll go to rapid fire. As is the format, and again, this is a surprise to you, Vijay. Only yes or no, no elaboration.
Yes or no? Just yes
More
or
or
no.
less.
Yeah.
One word. One word that defines central banking.
Competence.
Competence. One misconception about the RBI.
Slow. That it's slow.
Oh. Markets or poetry, what comes more naturally to you?
Poetry.
A word you overuse.
Like I said. The phrase. But
Silence or articulation?
articles.
Articulation. Did you enjoy your moments of silence? I'm sure.
I do. But then I'm always the silence leads up to more articulation.
One habit that sharpened your thinking.
Reading. I have spent enough time in this podcast talking about it. Please read, everybody. If you're seeing this, one takeaway, please read. I'm forcing my son also to do this, but please read.
A book that stayed with you.
Lots of different books at different times.
Most recent.
Most recent. I've gone back, and this is just because I found a drop in my pace in reading. And I went back to the original Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
Because I also studied it as part of my literature BA assigned, and I did a project on it also. But somehow something about it draws me back because Arthur Conan Doyle used to write short pieces that could be published quickly, and there was a demand for it, so he had to publish in a cycle. He tried to get rid of the character, tried to kill him off, but it was brought back, so he had to write something that he was not happy to write on. Something about it has always appealed, and it makes me think differently. Every time I read it, I find new things in the same stories.
One quality every communicator must have.
Ability to listen.
Ability to listen.
If you don't hear right, you're not going to reply right. If you're hearing something all the time to people when I'm training them, if you're listening to reply, then there is a problem. You must listen to understand. Then you reply. Listening is one activity, replying is another activity. When you're listening, you're already formulating the answer. Then your answer goes for it. Or could you half heard what the other one sees?
So true. Precision or ambiguity? Obviously, I don't know.
Some ambiguity. Yeah. When I work the RBI, which works with such precision. Ambiguity is where all the fun lies.
This is a journalist topic. Yeah. One line of poetry you wish you had written.
It's not poetry, but I always say it. It's not poetry. There are lots of poetic lines that I can. But one line that I wish I had written is from Metamorphosis, the first line by Kafka. One morning, Gregor Samsa awoke from uneasy dreams and found that he had been transformed into a gigantic beetle. That man has summarized the whole book in the first line of the book. That is the book. But then you will read the other next 200 pages of that book because he will then take you into the story. Imagine that line as you're starting. I wish I had written that.
That's the art of line writing in a newspaper. This craft is perhaps misunderstood, undervalued. That is how difficult it is. You're summarizing the whole story in headline, right? That's the background Vijay comes from.
I actually have used it as an example in classes. And iske aage kya likh do? But then he writes 200 pages and you read it.
So that is wonderful having you, Bijoy, and we had a ball. I hope I answered your questions to your satisfaction. I had my heart's well. Thank you so much for your
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a thank you. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Vijay, I cannot not ask you this. You've been teaching in colleges of repute, spend a lot of time youngsters trying to build in your own way, help the industry, get the good, better quality of talent. Any word of advice for them, for the new youngsters who entering the industry that you and I are part of?
Every single person who either been working with me or been a student of mine, I can hear them collectively grown right now. If they went to the say read as much as you can read. Um, you're you're not going to be able to live every experience. Can I live the Cold War? No, but I can read about it. Everything I know about World War II because there were books written about, Nazi Germany and this, and I learned about it, so I read them. Now they're part of it. I don't remember every single thing, but can remember about the Gulf War. What do you know? This. Same thing applies to reading. Also, if you're going to be a journalist, is reading newspapers every day. The simple example is if I tell you to write 10 standard exam today without studying 1 to 10 over the last 10 years, you're not going to be able to write that center, right? But if I studied in first time and I read in first time, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10, then without realizing it, I already remember all this. So it prepared me for the time. When someone goes for a interview or when someone goes for a meeting, and that person brings up something that happened 3 years ago, you may not have the materials. You should be prepped for it. That prep can only come from reading. So reading is prep. Just assume that all reading that you do is useful and read books. Read other things. Don't just read newspaper. Don't just read everything that comes up. Okay, because you're richer because you traveled through those words written by somebody in a certain cadence, in a certain manner, in a certain style, and that makes you a much better writer. Like I said about listening would apply listening. If I listen properly, I can apply that.
Right.
Same thing with if I read better, better.
Wonderful. If you read better, you write better. That's the mantra that I want you to go back. Youngster watching this, wanted you to go back. Will he make you better, richer? Thank you, Bijoy. Again.
Thank you, Prema.
It's a pleasure having you.